The afternoon sun, warm and buttery, streamed through Eleanor's kitchen window, painting stripes across her worn wooden table. At 65, her hands, still nimble from years of gardening, rested gently on a small, dusty wooden box. It wasn't just any box. It was a treasure chest of forgotten whispers, a silent keeper of words that had yearned to be spoken but never found their way. Eleanor sat in her favorite armchair, the one with the soft, faded floral pattern, pulled close to the window. Outside, the world moved at its usual brisk pace, but inside, time seemed to slow, holding its breath. For decades, this box had lived tucked away in the back of her closet, a secret chapter of her life she'd kept locked tight. Now, today, was different. A quiet resolve had settled over her, a gentle nudge from within that whispered, "It's time." Quote, She traced the delicate carving on the lid, a tiny rosebud that had been there since she was a girl. The wood felt smooth and cool beneath her fingertips. A faint scent of dried lavender and old paper drifted from the box, a ghost of memories past. Inside, she knew, were letters. Many letters. Letters filled with hopes, dreams, and the tender ache of a young heart. They were letters she had written to a boy named Simon, letters that had never left her bedroom, never felt the wind, never reached his hands. Her heart gave a soft flutter, like a bird stirring in its nest. Opening this box wasn't just about looking at old paper. It was about opening a part of herself she had long kept hidden, even from herself. It was about revisiting a time of innocence and longing, a time when a simple friendship had felt like the whole world. With a deep breath, Eleanor slowly lifted the lid, ready to finally share the words that had stayed locked in her heart for so very long. As the lid of the wooden box creaked open, a wave of childhood memories washed over Eleanor. The scent of old paper mingled with the imagined smells of freshly cut grass and summer rain, pulling her back to a time when life was simpler, brighter. Her mind drifted effortlessly, like a dandelion seed caught on a breeze, to the sun-drenched days of her youth. She saw herself, a skinny girl with pigtails, giggling as she chased fireflies in her backyard. And always, it seemed, Simon was there. Simon, with his unruly mop of brown hair and a grin that could melt any frown. He lived next door, and their two houses, separated by a low hedge, felt more like one big playground. Their friendship wasn't just ordinary. It was a tapestry woven with shared secrets, daring adventures, and endless laughter. They built towering forts in the woods behind their houses, their small hands working together to hoist branches and arrange leafy roofs. They spent countless afternoons skipping stones across the glassy surface of Miller's Pond, each trying to make theirs bounce one more time than the others. Simon taught her how to climb the tallest oak tree even though her knees wobbled at first, and she, in turn, showed him how to bake the best mud pies. Their bond was forged in the heat of summer days and the crisp air of autumn evenings. They knew each other's favorite colors, secret fears, and wildest dreams. They were two halves of a whole, navigating the world with a shared sense of wonder. Every scraped knee, every whispered wish under a blanket fort, every triumphant shout after catching a grasshopper. Simon was there. He was more than a friend. He was her confidant, her partner in mischief, and the keeper of her earliest, happiest memories. Remembering these times, a soft, wistful smile touched Eleanor's lips. The warmth of those childhood memories began to fade, replaced by a cooler, more somber feeling. Eleanor remembered the shift, the way the world seemed to tilt on its axis when she was 13. It was a Tuesday afternoon, gray and overcast, when her parents gathered her and her younger sister around the kitchen table. Her father, his voice unusually soft, delivered the news. They were moving, not just across town, but to a different state, far away from everything she knew. Eleanor's heart sank like a stone in a pond. Move? How could they? Her entire world was here, in this house, on this street, with Simon next door. The news hit her like a cold splash of water. She tried to imagine a life without their daily games, without his easy laughter floating over the hedge, without their whispered plans for future adventures. It felt impossible, a story without an ending. The hardest part was saying goodbye to Simon. There was no big, dramatic farewell, just a quiet, awkward afternoon in her backyard a few days before they left. She remembered the way he shuffled his feet, looking down at the grass, unable to meet her eyes. She wanted to tell him everything. How much she'd miss him, how scared she was, how she hoped they'd find each other again someday. But the words got stuck in her throat, a lump too big to swallow. Simon, usually so talkative, was also silent, his face clouded with a sadness she mirrored. They exchanged promises to write, to visit, to never forget. But even as the words left their lips, they felt fragile, like thin ice cracking underfoot. As the moving truck pulled away, Eleanor pressed her face against the window, watching Simon stand alone in his yard, a small, solitary figure. The distance grew between them, not just in miles, but in the silence that stretched out, carrying all the unspoken words, and leaving behind a deep, hollow feeling of loss. It was the end of a chapter, abrupt and painful, leaving her teenage heart aching with what might have been. In the new house, a place that felt cold and unfamiliar, Eleanor found herself lost in a quiet sadness. Her bedroom, with its strange wallpaper and unfamiliar view, offered little comfort. The ache in her heart for Simon grew stronger each day, a constant reminder of the friendship she had left behind. She missed his easy smile, the way he understood her without words, and even the silly arguments they used to have. The unspoken words from their last awkward goodbye gnawed at her. There was so much she wanted to tell him, so much she hadn't had the courage to say. One rainy afternoon, a week after the move, she found herself sitting at her new desk, a blank piece of paper before her. Her hand, guided by a sudden urge, picked up a pen. "Dear Simon," she wrote, the words flowing onto the page like a dam breaking. She wrote about how much she missed him, the endless days feeling empty without their adventures. She wrote about the new house, how it didn't feel like home, and how she wished he was there to explore it with her. She poured out her fears, her loneliness, and the deep, tender affection she held for him. She described the quiet streets, the strange faces at her new school, and how none of it felt right without him. Each letter was a small window into her heart, a secret diary meant only for his eyes. She filled pages with drawings of their old fort, reminders of their favorite jokes, and promises of a future reunion. She asked him questions she knew he'd never answer. Was he sad too? Did he miss her? Had he found new friends? Letter after letter she wrote. Some were short, just a few lines scribbled in haste, full of immediate longing. Others were long, thoughtful essays detailing every small event of her new, lonely life. Each one was folded carefully, tucked into an envelope and addressed to his old house. These letters became her way of talking to Simon, a way to keep their friendship alive, even if only in her imagination. They were a lifeline for her heartbroken teenage self, a place to hold all the words she wished she could say aloud. Each letter, once finished and folded, felt like a small piece of her soul. She would carefully slide it into an envelope, address it to Simon's old house, and then she would stop. Her hand would hover over the mailbox, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. A knot of fear would tighten in her stomach, holding her back. What if he didn't remember her the same way? What if he had already forgotten their secret jokes and shared dreams? The thought of her heartfelt words being met with confusion, or, worse, indifference, was too much to bear. Her teenage shyness, a quiet shadow that often followed her, grew into a giant wall. It told her that sending these raw, honest feelings might be a mistake. What if he laughed? What if he had moved on, and her letters just made him feel awkward? So the letters stayed. Each one, a carefully crafted message of love and longing, found its way not into the post, but into a special wooden box she kept hidden under her bed. It became her secret treasury, a safe place for the words she couldn't dare to share. Sometimes, late at night, she would pull out the box, untie the ribbon holding the stack together, and reread them. Each letter was a snapshot of her past feelings, a mirror reflecting her deepest hopes. As the months turned into years, the letters grew yellowed and soft at the edges. They were no longer just words. They were a part of her, a silent witness to her journey from a heartbroken girl to a young woman. The box, filled with its tender secrets, moved with her from house to house, from bedroom to attic, always tucked away. They were a secret part of her heart, a quiet promise of a friendship that, though broken, was never truly forgotten. She carried them not as a burden but as a precious private memory. As years turned into decades, the wooden box with its precious letters stayed tucked away, a silent witness to the changing tides of Eleanor's life. The immediate ache of separation slowly softened, becoming a gentle hum in the background of her days. She grew up, as all young people do, learning to navigate new towns, new schools, and new friendships. Life, with its endless stream of moments, pulled her forward. She met a kind young man named Thomas, whose steady gaze and warm smile brought a different kind of happiness into her world. They fell in love, shared dreams, and eventually married in a small, joyful ceremony. Their home filled with the laughter of children, first a son, then a daughter, and the busy, comforting rhythm of family life. Eleanor became a loving wife and a devoted mother, her days filled with school plays, scraped knees, bedtime stories, and the everyday miracles of raising a family. She found joy in her garden, in baking warm apple pies, and in the simple act of watching her children grow. Yet, even amidst all this happiness, a tiny, quiet corner of her heart held a memory of Simon. It wasn't a longing that caused pain anymore, but rather a soft curiosity. She wondered where he was, what kind of man he had become, if he had found happiness too. Did he ever think of the girl with pigtails who lived next door? Sometimes, a song on the radio, a scent carried on the wind, or the sight of two children playing in a field would bring a fleeting image of Simon to her mind. She would smile, a private, gentle smile, before returning to the happy bustle of her present life. The letters remained her secret, a hidden thread in the rich tapestry of her years, a silent question mark in a life that was otherwise wonderfully complete. She never forgot the boy who had been her first best friend, and a small part of her continued to wonder about the path his life had taken. The old wooden box, usually hidden away, had recently found its way to a shelf in Eleanor's sewing room. It was still a secret, but a less guarded one, almost waiting to be discovered. That discovery came one sunny afternoon when her granddaughter, Lily, a bright-eyed girl of 10, was visiting. Lily loved exploring her grandmother's house, a place she called a treasure trove, because of all the interesting things tucked into corners and onto shelves. While Eleanor was humming over her embroidery, Lily's curious gaze landed on the dusty box. Its delicate rosebud carving caught her eye. "Grandma, what's this?" she asked, carefully taking it down. The box was light, but felt important. Eleanor looked up, a little surprised. She hadn't expected anyone to find it, let alone ask about it. A flicker of her old shyness stirred, but it was quickly replaced by a different feeling, a warmth, a readiness. "That, my dear, is a box of old letters," she said, her voice softer than usual. Lily's eyes widened. "Letters? Who are they from? Are they very old?" She carefully lifted the lid, revealing the stack of yellowed envelopes tied with a faded ribbon. Her fingers gently touched the topmost one. "They look like secrets," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. Eleanor smiled. "They are secrets, in a way, secrets I kept for a very long time." She watched Lily's face, so full of innocent curiosity. In that moment, something shifted within Eleanor. For years, the letters had been hers alone, a silent burden and a private comfort. But Lily's simple question, her genuine interest, felt like a key turning in a lock. It wasn't just curiosity, it was an invitation. An invitation to share, to finally let these words breathe in the open air. A new conversation, one she hadn't known she was waiting for, had just begun. Lily's eager face, full of unspoken questions, made Eleanor's decision clear. The time for secrets was over. The box, which had guarded her youthful heart for so long, was finally ready to share its stories. Eleanor gently took the bundle of letters from Lily's hands. "Come sit by me, sweet pea," she said, her voice warm and inviting. "These letters, they tell a story. A story about a boy named Simon and a girl who used to be me. Lily settled onto the floor beside Eleanor's armchair, her eyes wide with anticipation. This was better than any fairy tale. "Tell me everything, Grandma," she urged, resting her chin on her hands. Eleanor smiled, a real, full smile that reached her eyes. "Well, it all started when I was just a little girl, not much older than you." And so, Eleanor began to unravel the thread of her past. She spoke of her childhood friendship with Simon, of building forts and skipping stones, of the endless summer days that felt like they would never end. Lily listened with rapt attention, imagining the scene, picturing her grandmother as a young girl. Eleanor's voice grew a little softer as she told of the sudden move, the sadness of leaving Simon, and the words that got stuck in her throat. "And after that," she explained, holding up the stack of letters, "I started to write to him. I wrote all the things I wished I had said, all the feelings I had, so they wouldn't just stay inside me." Lily looked from the letters to her grandmother's face, a flicker of understanding dawning in her young eyes. "You never sent them?" she asked, her voice a soft whisper. "No, I never did," Eleanor admitted, a sigh escaping her lips. "I was too scared, too shy. But now, with you here asking about them, it feels like it's finally time. Time to share these words, and this part of my life, with someone I love." It was a moment of true bravery for Eleanor, a release of decades of unspoken emotion. With Lily's innocent curiosity as her guide, Eleanor knew she was ready to open this hidden chapter completely. With a gentle sigh, Eleanor untied the faded ribbon holding the letters together. The paper crackled softly as she picked up the first envelope, its edges softened by time. Her fingers, a little shaky, slid out the folded sheet. It was written in a young girl's hurried hand, the ink slightly faded but still clear. She cleared her throat, then began to read. "Dear Simon," her voice started, a little hesitant, "I miss you so much. This new house is big and empty. There are no trees to climb here, and no one to tell my secrets to." As she read the words from her 13-year-old self, a mix of feelings swirled within her. There was the familiar pang of old sadness, a reminder of the raw loneliness she had felt back then. But beneath that, a new kind of courage bloomed, a quiet strength that came from finally giving these words a voice. Lily listened, completely still, her eyes fixed on her grandmother. She could almost hear the younger Eleanor's voice in her grandma's tone. Eleanor continued, reading about the longing for their shared adventures, the small details of her new, unfamiliar life, and the innocent questions about whether Simon remembered her. Her voice sometimes trembled, especially when she read a particularly heartfelt line, but she kept going. Each letter was a tiny time capsule, filled with the simple, pure emotions of a teenage girl. Some were cheerful, recalling a funny memory from their past. Others were wistful, wondering about his new life. As Eleanor read, she wasn't just speaking words. She was reliving moments, letting emotions she had bottled up for decades flow freely. Lily, too, felt the weight of the words, understanding a little more about the deep friendship her grandmother had once shared. It was a beautiful, tender moment, a bridge between the past and the present, built by the simple act of reading aloud. As Eleanor continued to read through the stack of letters, a surprising understanding began to blossom within her. She was no longer just a reader. She was a detective, uncovering clues about her own past heart. Each sentence, each carefully chosen word, wasn't just a message to Simon. It was a message from her younger self, explaining her feelings. She saw how, in those lonely teenage days, writing had been her only outlet. It was a safe space where she could be completely honest, without fear of judgment or rejection. She realized that by putting her feelings onto paper, she was actually helping herself. The act of writing down, "I miss you," or "I wish you were here," wasn't just about wishing Simon knew. It was about acknowledging her own pain and making it real, so she could begin to understand it. "Grandma," Lily interrupted softly, looking up at her with a thoughtful frown. "If you never sent them, then Simon never knew how much you missed him, right?" Eleanor paused, gently touching the old paper. "That's true, sweet pea," she said, her voice filled with a calm wisdom. "He never knew from these letters. But for me, writing them was like having a long talk with myself. It helped me figure out how I felt. When I wrote down how sad I was, It didn't make the sadness go away, but it made it feel smaller, more manageable. It was like I was sorting through a messy drawer of feelings, putting everything in its right place. She realized that the letters weren't just about a lost friendship, they were a record of her own journey through grief and adjustment. They were a testament to her quiet strength, a way she had coped when she felt utterly alone. Even without an audience, the act of creation had been powerful. The words she poured out, meant for Simon, had ultimately healed a part of her own heart. The letters were a gift she had given to herself, a way to understand her own complicated feelings. As the last letter was read, and Eleanor gently placed it back in the box, a profound sense of calm settled over her. The room felt brighter, the air lighter. It was as if a dusty window had been cleaned, letting in a fresh breeze. For so many years, those words had lived only inside her, a silent, heavy presence. Now, spoken aloud, shared with Lily, they no longer felt like a secret burden. She looked at Lily, who was still nestled beside her, a thoughtful expression on her face. "You know, Lily," Eleanor said, her voice soft and clear, "I've carried these letters, and the feelings inside them, for a very, very long time. It felt like holding a big, heavy stone in my heart." She paused, placing her hand over her chest. "But telling you about them, reading them out loud, it feels like that stone has finally been lifted." A small smile played on her lips. It wasn't just the relief of sharing a secret. It was the warmth of being truly heard and understood. Lily's presence, her quiet listening, had turned a private history into a shared moment of connection. Eleanor felt a lightness spread through her, from her chest to her fingertips. The old sadness was still a part of the story, but it was now woven with threads of peace and release. The past hadn't changed, but her relationship with it had. The letters, once a symbol of unspoken words and regret, now represented a journey of self-discovery and a bridge to her granddaughter. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, a deep, contented sigh escaping her. The weight that had settled in her heart all those years ago had finally, truly, begun to float away. It was a feeling of freedom, of coming home to herself, all thanks to the simple act of sharing her hidden words. Lily sat quietly for a moment after Eleanor finished reading, her young mind busy processing all the stories and feelings. She had learned so much more than just facts about her grandma's childhood. She had seen a glimpse into the heart of a young girl, full of joy and then sadness, and she understood why her grandma had kept these letters so close. "So even if you don't send them," Lily finally said, looking at the box, "writing things down can still help you feel better?" Eleanor nodded, a gentle smile on her face. "Exactly, sweet pea. Sometimes, just getting the words out of your head and onto paper makes a big difference. It helps you see what you're really feeling, and it makes those big, jumbled feelings feel a little less scary." Quote. Lily thought about this. She remembered times when she felt angry or sad, and sometimes drawing pictures of her feelings helped. This was like that, but with words. She realized that her grandmother, whom she always saw as strong and happy, had also felt lonely and heartbroken once. It made Eleanor seem even more real and wonderful to her. She had learned about a secret chapter of her grandma's life, a story of a special friendship and a quiet heartbreak. But more than that, she had learned a valuable lesson about feelings. It was okay to have big feelings, and there were ways to deal with them, even if you couldn't tell the person directly. The letters were a testament to the power of words, not just for communicating with others, but for understanding oneself. Lily looked at her grandma with new eyes, filled with admiration for the strength and wisdom she had just shared. The afternoon had been more than just a story. It was a quiet lesson for her own young heart. The quiet afternoon settled into a comfortable silence, filled with the warmth of shared stories. Lily eventually went off to play, her mind still buzzing with thoughts of young Eleanor and Simon. Eleanor, however, remained in her armchair by the window, the wooden box now resting on the table beside her. She picked up her pen, a fresh piece of paper waiting. This time, she wasn't writing to Simon in a desperate attempt to bridge a gap. This letter wasn't for him to read at all. It was for herself, a final word in a long, personal conversation. "Dear Eleanor," she began, a small smile touching her lips. She wrote about the journey, How the little girl who had moved away, heartbroken and shy, had grown into the woman she was today. She wrote about the pain of unspoken goodbyes and the secret comfort the letters had given her over the years. She acknowledged the fear that had kept her from sending them, but without judgment, simply as a part of her past. She wrote about the beautiful life she had built, filled with love and family, and how those memories of Simon had remained a gentle, curious thread. Most importantly, she wrote about the peace she felt now, the lightness in her heart, the quiet understanding that had come from sharing her story with Lily. It was a letter of gratitude for the lessons learned, for the strength she found in herself, and for the unexpected gift of finding closure so many years later. It was a gentle acknowledgement of her entire journey, a way to tie a neat bow on this chapter of her life. She folded the letter carefully, but this time she didn't address an envelope. Instead, she placed it on top of the stack of old letters in the wooden box. It was the newest message in her treasury of feelings, a testament to how far she had come. This final letter was not about what was lost, but about what was found, a deep, lasting peace within herself. Eleanor closed the lid of the wooden box, a soft click echoing in the quiet room. Her own handwritten letter, a testament to her long journey, now rested peacefully among the yellowed pages of her past. There was no more tightness in her chest, no lingering questions or regrets. Just a gentle, settled feeling, like the last rays of sun fading into a peaceful evening sky. She looked out the window, a contented smile on her face. The memories of Simon, once tinged with a quiet sadness, now felt like a cherished part of her story, a foundational stone of who she had become. The unspoken words had finally been spoken, not to their original receiver, but to a new, loving audience. And in that sharing, they had found their true purpose. Lily reappeared, a book in her hand, and snuggled back into the armchair beside her grandma. "Grandma," she began, her voice soft, "I'm glad you told me about the letters." Eleanor wrapped an arm around her granddaughter, pulling her close. "Me too, sweet pea. It feels good to finally let them out. And it taught me something important." She paused, gazing at the wooden box. "It taught me that even if you can't send your words, sometimes just writing them down and sharing them with someone you trust can bring you so much comfort. Some letters, even the unsent ones, can still do wonderful things for your heart." The afternoon light deepened, casting long shadows across the room. Eleanor held her granddaughter, feeling the warmth of their connection. The secret of the letters was no longer a burden but a bond, a shared piece of history that had brought them closer. Eleanor had found her closure, not in a reply from Simon, but in the quiet strength of her own heart and the loving ears of her granddaughter. The story of the unsent letters had finally found its beautiful, peaceful end.